Have you ever seen a woman, sharp, poised, and composed, go silent in the presence of a man who said nothing? No flirtation, no boldness, not even a lingering look. And yet, something shifted. The rhythm in her voice, the subtle pause between her words, the unconscious way she adjusted her posture, as if her body remembered something her mind couldn't name. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to, because stillness speaks louder than any compliment. And this kind of stillness, it doesn't perform, it doesn't chase, it doesn't seek validation, it reflects. And when a woman sees herself through that mirror, she doesn't see her beauty, she sees her control slipping. Not because he resists, but because he's not impressed. Not because he avoids her, but because he doesn't need her. She's not reacting to him. She's reacting to who she becomes in the presence of a man who no longer asks to be chosen. When this man appears, still, unshaken, unmoved, her body reacts before her mind catches up. There's a tension, not loud, not chaotic, but visceral. She talks more, yet says less. Words tumble out, stories stretch longer, but something feels hollow. She fidgets with a glass, a phone, a strand of hair, not out of nervousness, but because his presence doesn't collapse into hers. She asks questions that mean nothing. Where are you from? What do you do? She's not looking for answers. She's looking for grip, something to hold on to, because the usual games don't land here. He doesn't fill the silence. He doesn't flinch. And so, she does. She'll label him mysterious, arrogant, emotionally distant. Not because it's true, but because naming gives her comfort, and he gives her none. He's not avoiding intimacy. He's already full, and fullness doesn't beg to be seen. They say women start craving older men. That age brings depth. That experience becomes magnetic. But that's not the real story, because many older men still chase, still fear being ignored, still lose themselves for attention. So no, it's not about how many years he's lived. It's about how many illusions he's dropped. There comes a moment in a man's life where he stops building himself to be liked. He no longer explains, no longer adjusts, no longer reacts. From that stillness, a different kind of presence forms. Not cold, not superior, just whole. And that wholeness isn't loud, it's steady. And steady men shake everything unstable in others. Not because they try, but because peace is louder than charm. Most men want love, not as connection, but as rescue. They overgive, overtalk, overjustify, just to be chosen. But the rare ones, they no longer beg for closeness. They welcome it, but don't grip it. They don't need affection to know who they are. They don't measure love like a debt owed. He's not testing her, not resisting her. He simply doesn't move for attention. And that silence breaks the entire script. Because she was prepared for a man who needs to be needed, but not for the one who's already whole. She thought she knew how to guide the moment, to play soft, then pull back, to tilt the conversation just enough so the other person leaned in. She wasn't being manipulative, just aware of how people respond, especially men. Most need something to chase, a hint, a test, a little distance, but this time, nothing works. He doesn't lean in, doesn't chase, doesn't even try to solve the silence. And that cracks the code. Because she's not used to a man who doesn't flinch, who doesn't need her attention to stay present, who doesn't shift when she does. He just remains himself, still, full. And in that stillness, she loses the power she didn't realize she was using. Here's the secret. It was never about him. He didn't seduce her, didn't chase her, didn't play any game. And that's why it's working, because there's nothing for her to react to. No moves to counter, no rhythm to control, just a mirror, one that doesn't bend. So she begins facing the one thing she's avoided all along, herself, not the self she performs, but the one beneath it. And for the first time, the charm feels hollow, the distance feels fake, the games feel loud, because in the presence of someone who simply doesn't play, all performances fall silent. Control requires need, and he has none. Not for validation, not for affection, not even for closeness. He's not afraid of being alone because he isn't lonely. He doesn't shift when misunderstood because the truth doesn't tremble. And he's not trying to be kept because he's already free. She didn't expect this. She expected even the strong ones to need something too much to ever walk away. But this one, he could stay, he could leave, and either way, he remains whole. That's the kind of man no one can control. Not because he resists, but because there's nothing left to take.